Thanks, Marcy. And thank you everyone for coming, being here with us today on a chilly, rainy afternoon after a tropical weekend. I'm glad to see there are some groups here. We got some pizza on my left. Really good scene. If you can't hear me at any point, like make a wave or something. I'm gonna try to be energetic, to the point, concise, interesting. I know it's afternoon, so the more quickly we can move through things, I think the better. And hopefully we all leave today with a lot of good information, but also some techniques for making students have those whoa moments. We're really here because, you know, for those days when you walk into school, you're a little groggy, you're walking in the building, someone runs up to you, some student says like, whoa, Mr. Zoylan, you didn't tell me that when Julius Caesar said he was crossing the Rubicon, he meant more than just crossing a river, things like that. And these moments when all of a sudden you say to yourself, in a job that's largely about intrinsic, not extrinsic rewards, this is what I'm doing here. And this is really, you know, this is why I'm teaching, for moments like these inspirational times when students feel, like I get it. And that really does create lifelong learning. It creates the desire to learn outside of the classroom as well. And that's what we're really trying to do here. So I'm going to shortly share my screen, and I will give you a preview, an introduction to what we'll be doing on this Google document. We're going to have a shared doc, and that'll be really the home base. If you're in a group of 3 or 4 or 5, there will be a few moments where I say type individually or read. I guess maybe try to pull the computer close if you can at those very moments, and type, talk, write, whatever you might need to do to get that happening. So let me share this screen right now, and we'll get going. So desktop 1 getting shared. Everyone sees this? Cool. So here's our shared Google document. As noted, we are here to do, I'd say, 4 things. Center the student experience, make students at the center of their history learning, whether they are 10 years old or 15 years old or 20 years old. This matters, that they're at the heart of it. We're here to validate their thoughts and theories. If we're gonna have students thinking deeply and trying to share things with each other and get excited about learning, they've gotta feel validated, they've gotta feel like their voice is being heard and that they can say what's on their mind. We're here to create memorable moments in the classroom, things that students will recall more than they'll recall the facts, numbers, dates, whatever else that you tell them in class. They're gonna recall these memories and moments. And then we're here to make teaching fun for us. The chance to have this aha moment in the classroom can happen at any time, but every time it's a really enjoyable teaching experience. We're also here because we wonder, what can we do to create more of these eye-opening experiences and moments of fascination? And I will tell you that in the classroom, my goal is always to do just that, to create these moments of absolute fascination so that the history class spills far outside of the classroom boundaries. I'm going to begin with a goofy drawing of a valuable story that you've maybe heard before. The late David Foster Wallace told this at a graduation shortly before his death. And it's a story of 2 young fish swimming along. 2 fish are swimming, these young fish on the left here. An old fish swims at them. You can tell the grizzled old fish with the monocle and the cane there. And the older fish says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" 2 young fish nod, continue swimming. A few strokes down the water, the one fish turns to the other and says, "What is water?" And this is a story that I would tell students on the first day of each class. And it's a story that often opens students' eyes to think about, well, what are we doing here? Especially in middle school and in those early years of high school, when the waters can be so muddled and confusing for students, to have a step back to realize, well, we're not the only ones who aren't sure what's going on, I think can be a real revelatory moment. So as I scroll through the document, that's exactly what we're doing here. We're trying to think about that water around us. Take a look at scene 2 here. I'm gonna shortly send this document to you, and we're gonna look here and have a chance to respond. Again, if you're in a group, maybe you talk for a moment and get some comments in the open forum. These are the boxes in which to respond. So you'll have the chance to talk right here. Oh my, whatever that might be, these moments that you see, student comments that you've heard lately that indicate an aha, how this changes the student experience, then how these these really affect us as teachers. We'll look at a few examples that I've experienced before, that one small using a map, one larger using a lesson plan, and we'll talk about how to structure the lessons so that students feel at the center of that experience and they're coming to some real revelations on their own. I will certainly not read all the words on the screen. I'll walk you through this lesson, and then we'll have the chance, as I scroll below, to look at an actual piece of text from this book, Empires of the Sea, to think about how we as a group could structure a lesson, thinking first about the questions, what revelations we hope students can come to, and then actually to think about, oh, what's an activity we could come up with together? And you'll be in small groups depending on the size of who's in your room. So that's the plan. And at 4:55, we'll say tearful goodbyes, and we'll think about doing this again in the future and hope that this really inspires you to go out and think about how exactly you are teaching history. So, as I pause the share, we're going to go back into our video chat here. And Marcy, I'll ask you now to throw the document into the chat right there. And everybody, let's, if you would, go to that page 2 where there's the empty boxes. Because we're in a room on the internet, the best way to communicate, I think, is one of the ways that we all get to type and watch ideas percolate on the screen here. So we're going to take 4 or 5 minutes in this open forum. Anything goes. Fill in 2 or 3 boxes with some thoughts, and then we get to see what everyone is thinking. I'll put one on here just to get things started. All right, pencils down, everybody. I'm gonna share this screen, and we'll get to take a look at some of what we came up with. Please know that after this seminar or in the future, if you wanna come back to this document, if you wanna add to it, this is a resource for all of us, and please feel free to continue adding to the discussion as we go. So let's get a brief screen share going. Seems to be. So we can take a look for a moment at some of these. That's great. I don't know if you exist. Yes. I mean, that's a really wonderful Wedem I Lenape. What did they? Right, like those moments missing in history. What was happening there? And actually, the activity that we'll look at today is just that. It's an activity in partial stories and thinking about how do we tell a full story when we only have slices and selections. I think it's also, this ownership of their learning. That is probably the key to what we all want to do in the classroom. It's for students to desire the homework, for students to think like, well, I'm doing my best because it actually contributes to everyone's understanding. I'm going to try hard on this assignment because I want to. Show students are engaged. Right, it's actually, I find that these moments are one of the best measures of our progress. Grades are one in a way, but most of us are not teaching to a specific standard or a specific test. And thus we get to open things up and measure in an entirely different way. Processing information. Excellent. Okay, so I want to take a look right now as we're all on the screen share. Can everyone see this map? Al-Idrisi's map of the world. This was made at the behest of Roger II of Sicily around 1154. An activity that I once, many times used with students was using this map. And we'll first start with the simple edition of how to create these moments in the classroom of discovery. And then we'll go to a more complex one, which actually looks at a few lessons. I believe this will be the part of our seminar today with probably the most me talking. So I'll try to keep it quick, interesting, etc. Here's the deal with this. This map is incredibly detailed and in fact was used for centuries after 1154 as a fairly decent world map, whether for navigating or for understanding the shape of the world. But when students first look at this, the reaction is, what is that? That is not a map that I recognize. And so of course, what's gonna happen at the start is students look skeptically. And what I found the most effective way to teach this map or to use this map is to just let it sit on the board for at least 10 minutes. And students start talking to each other and they start arguing about what they see. And maybe they even make fun of the cartographer. They start saying, this is a bad map. They don't understand. It's a way to kind of step back and say, the medieval world thought differently about the world, sure. But then what might start to happen if you lob a few comments in, this is actually a really accurate map. Maybe you should look at it differently, think about it. You might start, someone is gonna look sideways or upside down. And if in fact someone lays on a desk and looks at this map upside down, the first and the most important threshold of revelation has been breached, because this is a map with south at the top. And then students start sharing with each other. And now we have, I mean, what's awesome too is that this is not, you don't have to be the most intelligent person in the room to know the most about this map. You have to think differently. So the student who might not be so used to having the quote unquote right answer is now the expert in the room. And students start to all, I mean, at the point at which 20 students are laying on desks and looking at the map upside down, they start to realize what you wanted them to realize in the first place. Who said north was up? And what if indeed this map is accurate if it looks nothing like we're familiar with? As some fire trucks go by, I will move us on to the next thought here. So when we structure a lesson, and you'll have this document, so I will give you simply overview notes here. You want to start with what you hope the students should learn. What are we trying to reveal? And then you can find a tough question. The map question was, what are we looking at? You know, that's a tough question for this moment. The question we'll look at with this Roman town, Christian town activity is, why are the faithful faithful? And how does religion spread? And what was the effect of persecution then and now? If we can provide documents that provoke discussion and create activities centered around those documents to encourage students to openly engage with the material and to recognize the partial story as the best we've got, then we have the chance to give students freedom to guess and speculate and hopefully actually reveal things to each other. They're gonna find that maybe they don't know, but the guess is as good as we can get. And that's a really wonderful thing to find in the classroom. And of course we want time for reflection. We'll do that today as well. But everyone should have the chance to experience this aha. If some get it, maybe more will start to get it. And that's why group work activities, and specifically this Roman town, Christian town activity that we'll look at, will give us some time to think. So let's scroll down here to, we're still on the screen share. So the background information. We're looking at the Roman Empire in the early 200s. And the question, of course, is how did Christianity spread? I should note, the reason I brought this activity to our discussion today is that it was a time when I thought I was just gonna do something slightly fun in the classroom. People act out a Roman scene, and we're gonna see if any Christianity spreads. But it turned out to be so successful beyond my expectations that I thought we were playing history and living history in a way that I had not seen in my classrooms before. So we can read this later, but we have Caracalla, the emperor, we have Perpetua, an example of a saint, and students would be given some materials that would give them first a persecution edict, and second, the story of a martyr who was willing to die rather than relinquish her faith. I'll give everyone just a moment to look at the background. And again, feel free if a question comes up, if ideas, if you want to just contribute something in the chat box, please feel free to do that at any time. Caracalla, of course, is one of these emperors you would not want to double cross. I think in the year 207, he had recently killed his brother to maintain a firmer hand on the control of Rome. But what Rome could not fight against was people's beliefs. And that's, of course, what we're hoping students can discover here. So this is a three-part lesson. The first part is providing background, having discussions, completing readings. The second part the second day is when we apply knowledge. We think about what about Christianity was particularly appealing in this moment. We have students write using the context of the situation and thinking about, of course, their own opinion. Well, what do you know about faith and feelings and all the above? The homework and the second part of class is to start a role play scenario in which students will become a Roman town. As noted, they're going to create the list of characters. Let students think about, well, what does a town need? What's required? Aqueduct attendant, a town poet, an innkeeper, a shipbuilder. It depends. Let them decide. And also let the students, hopefully, determine their own parts to play. Their homework will be a diary entry to get in character, and you can provide a few leading questions. What have you heard about Christianity? What are your goals? What's happening in town? And then they should get a costume, make something simple, and get ready for the next day in class when it's rumored the emperor will be visiting. Now, of course, students love the chance to play history, to demonstrate something. What they don't expect, of course, I'm actually going to italicize this. What most everyone doesn't know in this lesson is that the teacher has informed two trusted, crafty, attentive students. I think we all know some of these in each of our classrooms, that those are going to be secret Christians. And their goal is to convert the classroom or the town. But no one else is aware of this. And if done correctly, and if the students really get into it, the potential for magic will happen. And I'll tell you about how it went in the one day when two students of mine, let's call them Julia and Matilda, were the secret Christians. Things began normally. Normal day in Roman town Rome, mingling, discussion, people getting to understand each other's roles. Occasionally, every 5 or 10 minutes or so, a colleague who was brought in as a messenger would come by with an announcement. Something, whether it was a Roman policy, an edict, maybe an important visit, maybe the circuses were beginning, whatever it was something that was going to stir up some discussion and potentially some conflict in the classroom. What happened in this class with Julia and Matilda as the secret Christians was so remarkable that it was one of these moments when at the end you say, what you showed in class today was better than reading a dozen books on the subject of the Christianization of Rome, because it showed on a local level, using middle school themes like peer pressure and coolness to actually cause a rebellion in the classroom. So the secret Christians were hosting meetings, but somehow the town governor was unaware. She thought everything was business as usual. The Christians were putting on this face of adherence to the emperor's rules, but in the background, crosses, images of crosses were being slipped into pockets. Meetings were happening at the inn. There was, in fact, a few people left the classroom. Seemed like just a bathroom break. It was actually a plot to take over the government of the town. And so without our governor even understanding, the whole town had been converted Christian within 25 minutes. Of course, it's middle school. Something cool is going on. Who doesn't want to join in? But this served to actually teach us, the students in the classroom, what it might have felt like to realize that a faith was providing more than Rome could provide for this local town. And so when we reflected upon this, the original Roman governor was taken out of the room in false chains at the end of the lesson. I was in shock, and it was a really wonderful thing. We're complicating the narrative. And so no longer is the Christianization of Rome just Constantine seeing a vision in the sky and as if from above all of Rome's people become Christian. It becomes more local and more realistically how people might have converted, and still today. So those of, especially at the age of, let's say 13 or 14, a number of students, no matter their religion, are brought into church, temple, their local mosque for the sake of following a religion they might not understand. Here's a chance to say, oh, maybe that's why people are faithful. And maybe that's why, even though the people 1800 years ago seem incomprehensible to us, they have human feelings. They're real people with real lives. And perhaps that explains the Christianization on a level. So that's the essence of the lesson. I'm going to stop the screen share for just a moment because we are approaching our activity. So welcome back. Please take just a second to think about, I talked about 10 straight minutes there. So just take a moment if you want to. I'll take a look at the chat for just a second. Yes, so the answer to the question of what students were doing for the half hour, they were told to come up with in their diary a goal for the day, and therefore they were hoping to perform that goal. There was certain things, a messenger would come and say like, okay, the emperor is coming, everyone must get ready for that. So it's the innkeeper made sure the inn was looking good. There were all the Christian symbols were eliminated. There was moments in which maybe we were told like, there's going to be a chariot race and people were pretending. There was also the case where this was middle of the year and there had been enough lessons in which students were role-playing, play acting, performing, that they understood kind of the bounds of the improv opportunity. And then, yeah, the key is, of course, as the teacher, you're not actually, you're kind of hovering above it all. So if there's ever a waning of anything, one way, of course, to stir things up is to say, I heard a rumor that, you tell the local sheriff in town, there might be some Christianity in the inn. And then, of course, they have to find a new place to perform their rituals. So we are now going to, we're going to try this on our own. So if you look on the document at the page I just stopped at, it should be page 7 now. There's a short reading from this book, Empires of the Sea, about the Ottoman siege of Malta in 1565 and its aftermath. What we're going to do right now, and if you'd like to turn your video off because sometimes we make a reading face, you're welcome to do so. Read these 4 short paragraphs, and that will allow us to get ready for our activity. As you read, think about, well, what's going on here and what might I want students to learn? I'll put 3.5 minutes on the clock. At 4:37, we'll get into groups. So take a few minutes, have some reading time. Okay. So still a few videos off, but nearly back, awesome. So we're now gonna divide into some small groups. It's possible your group is large if you have 4 or 5 people in the room, but that is okay. That'll just mean more opinions and more discussion. This is gonna be about 11 or 12 minutes to work together. I believe, Marcy, you're able to send me to different groups? Okay,
I'm gonna send you to a group and then you come back to me and I'll send you to another one.
Great, okay, so it's like bouncing around the classroom. I'll have a chance to mostly listen, but here's what we're doing in the group. So if we look back at the document for just a moment, and if you're on your document right now, we're trying to craft first an essential question to think about. What are we trying to get at? What do we want the students to learn? So in your group, first talk about possible questions. What are we seeing here? This is talk about rumors and partial stories. And then talk about these revelations. I put 2 on here as examples. So first, this question, what happens when information cannot be trusted? That's very broad. But what happens in an age of disinformation? We seem to be living in one. Possible student revelations and discoveries. The full picture is impossible. We only get a partial story. It took me, I think, till senior year of college to get that lesson. And that changed my entire academic career. Like, I went from thinking history was a collection of memorization, which I was good at, but I didn't find that interesting, to, whoa, if I don't know anything, like all of a sudden my voice becomes much more important in this story. Like you go from being listener and memorizer to historian. And I think that's a hugely valuable thing. So in your group, think about the question, think about the revelations. Maybe you put 1 of each or more. And then we're going to talk about possible activities. So give yourselves at least 5 minutes to talk about ways you might craft an activity in that classroom that could impart this lesson using the text you've seen. So I'm unsharing the screen. Marcy, I'm going to ask us to go into small random groups, and we will be in those groups until 4:50.
Let me explain.
Welcome back. Really good discussion. Thank you, everybody, for entertaining each other, but also at this hour in the day, and also really coming to some conclusions ourselves. I want to give a few final thoughts in the next few minutes, and then we'll have to say goodbye. Please note first, the discussions, the goal here, just like the goal in the classroom, is that this continues. Whether you take this to people in your school and think about it, whether it causes us to rethink an upcoming lesson, were this a longer session, we would dive into some of our own material and try to rethink about it as, well, what are the things that we want students to bring and have this like, oh, I'm brushing my teeth and all of a sudden I realize, wait, that's what Cleopatra must have been thinking. You know, these types of moments are the ones that I think the students will remember. Each of us, I'm sure off the top of our head, could name 3 or 4 essential moments in our middle and high school career where we developed a different understanding of the study of history. And it's those that we hope we can create for students in any classroom we're in. It's also those that I think anyone who's really interested in the world and caring about learning will find, whether they're reading news, walking around, simply thinking about the world around them. That's what we're trying to create, because our influence only goes as far as the classroom until we've created a way for students to think differently outside that classroom. Yeah, I think, you know, ultimately the benefits, you get historical empathy, you get student buy-in, a thirst for knowledge, and time to work both together and alone. And that ability to feel validated in theories and practices of our own is so important for someone in their teenage years for whom everything else seems mysterious. History is especially mysterious, but if you let the kids know it's okay that it's mysterious, that can be a revelation in and of itself, and kind of get them understanding that water around them a bit more. A few things, you know, I came into this, Marcy asked me a little while ago, what are the takeaways that you hope to achieve? And I think there were 3, and hopefully we got them. One is that when students are the ones doing the discovering, they will more enduringly understand the material and care about it. 2, that a love for history or a fascination with history is ultimately more valuable than knowing all the facts, especially now when we carry these supercomputers in our pockets. And then finally, that activities are one of the best ways to make this happen. That an activity-based classroom, if set up in a way that students feel comfortable and active and involved, will create a lot more opportunity for, in the breakout groups, on their own, chances to say, whoa, that's really incredible. Or maybe even, as David Foster Wallace would end his speech at, I believe, Dayton College, this is water. This is water. So I conclude there. I think, Marcy, did I make it under the time limit?
You did great, David. Thank you.
Cool.
Even in time, if anybody has a quick question or comment,
please do.
Unmute and speak up.
But yeah, thanks everyone for coming at 4 to 5 p.m. on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
I have to tell you,